All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. I think it's going to be a fun one. Today we got Lily Ray, who's a SEO expert. This is kind of the focus of the call today, which is, there's lots of noise about AEO out there, and lots of people who are incented to make audacious claims about like how it's changing marketing. And as a demand marketer, I was like, can you just explain it to me as you might to a young child or a golden retriever? I just want to understand this so I can like have confidence about it when someone like maybe my boss who's slacking me LinkedIn posts with hot takes is asking me, just give me like some clarity on this. So that's what I came to Lily with as a question. We published this newsletter and then we wanted to run this as an open Q&A so you all can ask your specific questions to her. Um, I have maybe 10 minutes of slides where we'll just summarize what we covered in the newsletter to give context, and then we'll have a bunch of time for open Q&A where we'll invite you onto the stage um, to share your questions and then get them answered by Lily. So with that said, let's dive in. Anything else you want to share, Lily, before we do, or maybe just like a quick intro?
Yeah, for sure. So, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Lily Ray. I'm the VP of SEO Strategy and Research at Amsive. So, I oversee our SEO department. And this year, we've also launched an AEO offering as well. So, answer engine optimization. We're extremely obsessed with all things SEO and AI search. I've been looking at the data every day from lots of different providers and just trying to wrap my head around how everything works. So, I'm really excited to share with you all what I've learned and what's working and what's not working today.
Love it. All right. Well, yeah, let's get into it. For anyone new, go ahead and drop in the chat if you have any specific questions. We're gonna have lots of time for Q&A as well, where I'll invite you on camera to ask your questions to Lily. All right. So yeah, explain this to me like you would to a young child or a golden retriever, right? I don't know what this is, and then basically for this 10-minute summary, I'm gonna approach this from the lens of like how a demand marketer like me understands AEO or a demand marketer like you might, and then Lily, you'll be able to chime in and be like, oh, you might be off base or not here, but I think that's gonna be more helpful in explaining these concepts from our specific lens. So yeah, I talked with Lily and the Ansem team, and kind of the conclusions I got to were these three key points, which is number one, AEO is not replacing search. The data says it's supplemental. People are still using search, and now they're also using AI assistance. Number two, what it takes to win in AEO is not that dissimilar from what it takes to win in SEO. It's just good content. And when you create good content optimized for humans, that also becomes optimized for these AI assistants. And then so what, which is I'll talk about quickly, like my kind of POV now on how to categorize this and understand the AEO thing in my head as a demand marketer. So the first thing is it's not replacing search. It's supplemental. Sorry. Um, this is data from SparkToro based on Datos data, which is like clickstream data. So the best data we can get on this, which is like search engine usage is flat. So it's not like it's dropping off a cliff and AI is replacing all of search, which is what we're hearing a lot. So that's the first thing, which is good to understand, which is that normal SEO is not dead because of this. Now, understanding that, like, how do you rank in GEO? And the answer is like good SEO is good GEO. It's good content optimized for humans. There's slight differences, but generally, this is a good frame. Is like, are you creating content that's optimized for humans that's helping humans answer their questions? Um, this is the guy from Google who's like a big SEO guy, apparently, is saying this.
Yeah, it's Danny
Uh,
Sullivan.
so I wanted to point out, like, we did a deep dive with Chris Shuktrian, who's the VP of marketing at Tory, about his SEO strategy in the lens of like, he's a VP of marketing at a, growth stage startup. He doesn't have that many tools at his disposal. He thinks about SEO as I have a very high intent phrase, SaaS management. I want to show up in front of anyone who's searching for that phrase in five different places within 5 minutes of research. And by doing that, he's been able to increase his enterprise leads quarter over quarter by like 90%. And I think it's a good example of SEO as a business problem, not as a doing SEO or AEO for AEO's sake. It's like we have this very clear business problem. We have high intent leads we're not showing up for. Let's utilize this as a tool to show up in front of them. I think it's the right way to do it. And the way he did that was by creating good content, content optimized for humans. That talks about his phrase. Um, so yeah, that's the context, right? Which is AEO is not replacing search. The way to rank an AEO is kind of the same as AEO, which is good content, and this should be back to the business problem. So if that all is true, then how do we make good content? Here's this slide. I'll let you guys screenshot this. I don't want to go deep into the weeds on the details, but we can if you have questions and you want to double click with Lily. My takeaway, Lily, let me know if I'm wrong here. My takeaway is like AEO supplemental. So there's more traffic from new AI assistants. And it is true that the way people are using AI assistants is different. So like if I am looking in Google, I'm a best CRMs, maybe best CRMs for startups. But if I'm an AI assistant, I'm like, I run a Series B cybersecurity company with a marketing team that's this big, and I do this, and I'm looking for CRMs. What are the best options? So that like query fan out process means that the queries are different. So there are strategies to like create content that fits different queries that maybe you wouldn't have had volume for in the straight up SEO
Mhm.
world. But then other than that, generally it's like you want to be adhering to these best practices. But that's the main difference in my mind is like there's more queries. So the opportunity is to create content for those queries. Other than that, it's still good content. Is that on base?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you kind of got at the fundamental difference there, which is how people structure their searches and the types of searching that they're doing, right? I think for 20 plus years, we've grown really accustomed to using search engines. And if you're like me, you probably go to a search engine and you type things in a way that you think the search engine's going to understand it, like using kind of just like a low number of keywords, really, really direct, kind of like just searching for the exact thing you're looking for. And now with large language models, we're a bit more conversational with how we search. We're obviously like having these more like almost human-like conversations with LLMs. And to your point, not only does that mean that there's a broader set of like considerations that the LLM's looking at to answer the question, they also are in many cases doing query fan out. So for anybody who's unfamiliar with query fan out, it's like they take the initial prompt from the user, and then in the background, they're conducting many, many different concurrent search queries. They're looking at actual search results for different types of queries that are almost like sequential. After what the user might have asked, what are the other things they might be considering, or what are the very specific considerations that they might have based on their personal search behavior, their history, their location, what the LLM actually knows about them. So yes, traditional SEO used to be much more focused on like kind of a specific keyword or specific topic, whereas with LLM, answer engine optimization, we have to think more broadly about like not only what is this thing that the user's getting at, but what's the next step that they might be thinking about, and making sure that our content kind of answers all those sequential questions as well.
Is that a like if I'm Chris here and I'm starting with my like high intent phrase SaaS management,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's like the old SEO world was someone searching best SaaS management platform, but now it's like I'm a cybersecurity company in this industry and I'm doing SaaS management. And then is the implication there you're creating a bunch of different pages with different types of content that are related to all like whatever the most common unique queries are for sub niches, or is it different?
Sort of. I mean, I think you have to be careful as soon as we start talking about like creating lots of different pages. And the reason
Yeah.
I'm very careful is because I've worked in the SEO space for a long time. And one of the most common patterns for sites that end up getting in trouble with Google is they create lots and lots of content for the sake of whether it's SEO visibility. Now with AI search visibility, a lot of people are doing very similar things. So, when it comes to creating lots of new pages, those pages need to be really meaningful for the user and they need to be very unique. So if you have something unique to say and you have a unique perspective and unique data and insights and original ideas and everything like that, you should absolutely build new pages. If you're creating a lot of pages for the sake of answering questions that have already been answered online, especially with AI search, now there's so many websites they can draw from that just have like definitions to things or like simple answers to things. Search engines and AI search crawlers don't need that content. They already have that content. They can already answer that content. But if you can offer something net new and something original, That's really, I think, where I would focus. And then I would also really, recommend focusing on your brand's unique offerings. So I've seen a lot of companies like I looked at a site last week where they're a SaaS company and they have this like animated GIF that shows all the different tools that they integrate with, but they don't ever spell it out in plain text. So, if you're an LLM, you can't really see what's happening on that animated GIF. But if you can put in plain text, these are all the different products that our SaaS integrates with. It's much easier for an LLM to retrieve that type of information. So a lot of this just really has to do with like taking your main like mission statement as a business, your USP, like everything like that, and basically making it extremely easy for LLMs and search engines to retrieve that information.
Okay, that makes sense. So only if it's good content, helpful and useful
Yeah,
to
unique,
humans,
original, not
past the
something
bar, yeah.
that's just been said a million times before. Yeah.
Um, but the query funnel process does like kind of necessitate doing new things, right? If there's like new, I don't know what you call it, search volume, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Problem.
there's a number of new tools and we can talk about that in a bit, but like there's new tools that you can use to basically replicate how the large language model is doing query fan out. And it's different from model to model. So like ChatGPT does it differently than Gemini, for example. But luckily we are able to actually see under the hood and see how these tools are doing query fan out. And it's important to note that it's different from user to user. It's different from search to search, right? Because by definition, these tools are meant to be unique every time. They're meant to generate unique answers every time and personalized answers. So like you're not always going to see the same thing for every user, but the more you can kind of like aggregate that data and kind of look at the trends and look at the common questions that are being asked, the more you can say, hey, maybe there's this type of query that's being asked every time people ask about best SaaS software or whatever. And we need to make sure that we're answering those questions in our content as well.
Totally. Okay, lovely. Um, this is the end of me talking, and then we'll get to the person who you all came forward to talk. But this is my general summary, which is like AEO isn't a new opportunity. Generally, we win in AI systems the same way we win in search, which is creating good content. But it's not a quick win. It takes a lot of work. Obviously, that being said, there are still maybe tactics that'll help us win in the short term, which some of them are outlined here. And then you need to think about it as like a business problem, which is the impact of implementing these strategies is either net new awareness, if there's lots of questions our ICP is searching for in these tools that we think there's opportunity to rank for quickly, or high intent leads like the Tory situation where you're not showing up for your key phrase and you want to. And so generally the way we as demand marketers should like prioritize this in our tool belt is the way we would prioritize anything else, which is what the business impact we can drive from this, not I saw a LinkedIn post about AEO and it's this huge trend and it's a blue ocean with like a quick wins everywhere. Instead, we should be like, what impact do we think it can drive and how does it compare to the other channels? Which generally I think means like it needs to fit with the way our buyers buy. There need to be people like already searching, and almost always it's this one, like the high intent leads, not the net new awareness, because that's usually easier to get in other places. So that's my general summary. Am I missing anything here, Lily? Would you generally agree with this or disagree with anything?
No, I think that makes sense. I think it's important to contextualize like how many users in your target audience are using LLMs and like which LLMs they're using. Getting that data as much as possible, which right now, unfortunately, the tooling and the attribution is not perfect in this space right now. But like being able to, there's tools like SparkToro, for example, where you can actually see in your niche, which LLMs people use the most. You can obviously look at your own analytics and your own log files and everything and understand like which AI crawlers are coming to our site the most, which ones are sending the most traffic, and then if you can see, yeah, there's definitely like significant traffic, coming from ChatGPT or ChatGPT appears to be hitting our website a lot, then maybe, yeah, like, there's an audience there and you have to think about adapting your strategy for AI search. But for many situations, like doing great SEO work is sufficient to appear in LLMs, which I think we'll talk about a lot today. It's not the end all be all. Like there are different considerations for AEO, but I think in many cases, many of the brands that have the best visibility in AI search right now just have really strong SEO foundations.
Totally. Which, like, an application to demand marketers means probably if you're not doing SEO for a good reason right now, you might not be wanting to do AEO. But if you are doing SEO for a good reason and it's working, then like definitely um, you want to double down because there's this new traffic coming in.
For sure.
Okay, great. I just had a question. Yeah, I think this is one where I want to start. I have a question that Samantha also asked, but do you like you've seen a lot of companies doing AEO work and you've done a lot of AEO work for companies. If you were like just starting, what is there like a 80/20 here of like the 20% of work that'll get 80% of the results, especially if you have like minimal SEO work set up?
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of like a multifaceted approach. So you have to think about there's kind of like three different ways that AI search can find out about you. Number one is going to be your owned assets. So what you say about yourself on your own website. And this can extend beyond your own website. It could be maybe multiple different sites that you control. So for example, like you could have like a LinkedIn page or something like that where you post, information or your X profile, your social media accounts can also be places that you can control the information. You can also have author biographies across different sites that you publish for. So there's a lot of like owned assets in the sense that it's something where you can kind of like influence the information that appears there. And then there's earned, which is what other people are saying about you, which absolutely plays a very, very big role in AI search. I would say probably even more so than with SEO. These AI tools are looking at what is being said about you on trustworthy third-party sites. So that's more of like a digital PR play. You want to make sure that your brand is being mentioned on relevant publications and relevant articles, relevant conversations whenever possible. And then the third is really like social media. Reddit, YouTube, Facebook actually are some of the most heavily cited and trafficked sites when it comes to AI search. And if you think about why that is, if you think about the commonalities between the sites that are most heavily referenced in AI search, almost all of them have a lot of user generated content and a lot of real authentic conversations where people are potentially talking about your brand. But they're not talking about it in a salesy way, right? They're talking about it in a real authentic way because they've used it, they tried your competitors. That's the stuff that AI search really likes to pull from. So to the extent that you can contribute to those conversations or at least pay attention to those conversations, but also make sure your brand is involved. Like maybe if you have an official branded account on Reddit where you can like talk to your customers, or just kind of coming up with a strategy to be visible across social platforms is also really important for AI search. So I think it's that three-pronged approach of owned, earned, and social.
Owned, earned, social, great. And then organized or aligned around your like whatever your highest intent searches are
Yeah,
after,
like
right?
making sure that like the messaging is consistent. Like what is your brand? What does your brand do? Why is your brand recognized? What are the key things people should know? What are the awards you've won? Like having all that data kind of like corroborated and like reinforced across many different places on the internet means it's more likely that it's going to show up in AI search.
Totally. Um, Amazing. Okay. You work for a great uh, AEO SEO agency, Amsive. And by great, I mean you work with like a lot of really impressive SaaS brands that I can't name, but wish I could name to give you some credibility. And you've been in the space for a really long time. Like, how would if I'm a demand marketer and I'm getting hit up all these different agencies talking to me about like becoming my vendor of choice, like any thoughts on how to pick a good agency vendor or like questions you should ask them or things you should look for?
Hmm. Um, I think having some time and history in the space is important right now, just because there's a lot of people that have entered the market in the last year without what I believe to be important experience and important context. For example, a lot of people have jumped on this like AI search bandwagon seemingly out of nowhere. Like I haven't seen, a lot of people talking about the death of SEO and things like this. Like when you look at their work history, it's like they've never worked in SEO before. And I think they don't realize that a lot of the stuff that they're advocating for AI search is actually what SEOs have been doing professionally for a long time. So I think having that type of history is important. Not only that, SEO teams that have been around for a while understand the cyclical nature of a lot of these types of things. So I would not sleep on Google and Gemini and AI mode and all the different AI features that Google's rolling out right now, because the data that I've been sharing a lot of this, but the trend, Google's slowly creeping in. Google's slowly starting to capture some of the market share that we've seen ChatGPT really own for the last couple of years. And I think that like if you don't have the context about how to not get in trouble with Google. That's really, really important context, not only for Google, but because OpenAI and ChatGPT and different LLMs actually use Google search results and Bing search results. So like I would look for an agency with that type of experience. Number two, I would look for case studies. It's very, very easy for people to say, we've increased ChatGPT traffic by XYZ, but the reality is ChatGPT traffic has increased for many sites over the last year by doing nothing, right? Because it's increased for everyone because more and more people are using it. So
That's like, wait, real quick. I see these LinkedIn posts about like how people are like driving these crazy results with AEO, and then the results are like we got no AI traffic, and now we're getting a bunch of AI traffic. And
it's
I'm like,
like
is this?
zero last year. Yeah.
And I feel like you're just doing this to progress your own career, not to not that it's actually proving impactful. I don't know.
Yeah. Like
That's good to
that's
hear.
why,
Thank you.
like, yeah, if an agency can put together like a case study that says like, yeah, we literally built this content or restructured this content or changed our messaging and we saw this lift in AI search or we saw more brand mentions or whatever KPI they're focused on, that's much more interesting to me than saying like we increased our ChatGPT citations by X%, without providing the necessary like context of how that happened.
Okay, sweet. Those are great. Um, all right, guys, put your questions in the chat, and then I'll bring you on to go on camera and ask Lily real quick. I just have this this novice question that I feel bad, but maybe some other people do. Um, if I just want to get a report for like like an Ahrefs style report of like the prompts that people are using
Mm.
to ask about my tool, like is that possible?
Yeah, it's not really a novice question. It's actually a really good question. So yeah, I mean, like historically in SEO, right, we've had tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush and everything where we can just go in there and like generate lots of different keywords based on how people are searching on search engines. A lot of that's originally pulled in from Google's ad planner because Google actually shares that data, with consumers. We don't have, from the horse's mouth, we don't have OpenAI sharing prompt data. We don't have Google really publicly sharing what people are searching aside from Google Search Console. So there's some workarounds. We don't have it straight from the horse's mouth, but there's some ways to kind of get an idea of what people are searching. So number one, if you go into Google Search Console, unfortunately, Google is not breaking out AI mode and AI overview searches separately from organic search searches, which is probably the number one single biggest challenge for all of us in this space right now, because AI overviews is where actually the bulk of AI search traffic is happening, right? If you think about 14 billion searches a day on Google, 20-30% of those show AI overviews. That's a lot of people seeing AI overviews every day. We can't see that data in Search Console. What you can do is when you look at your queries in Search Console, you can create regex filters to kind of isolate queries that are a certain number of words. So for example, if you want to look at queries that are 6 words or longer, you can probably assume an AI overview appeared for that, or maybe that the user was using AI mode. It's not perfect, but it's a good way to start. So let's say like minimum 6 words in Search Console, look at all those keywords. You're going to see a lot of what look like prompts, for AI search. There's also tools that you can use to simulate query fan out. So we talked about query fan out before. You can literally see how the models are doing these subsequent longer, kind of like long tail fan out queries. So you can use the Gemini API. There's a variety of free tools in the SEO space. So a couple that come to mind, there's an SEO named Dan Petrovic. He bought queryfanout.ai. That's the domain. You can literally use it for free. You can type a keyword, you get a bunch of fan out queries. You can use the Gemini API. Mike King from iPullRank built one called Qforia. There's an agency called Locomotive that built something called AI Coverage by Locomotive. All these tools are free. All of them basically use the APIs from either ChatGPT or from Gemini to retrieve those different fan out queries. So those are not user prompts again, but it enables you to like put one keyword or one idea or topic and to see all the different fan out queries. So I think Between that, plus kind of like supplementing it with your traditional SEO keyword research, like you can, for example, with Ahrefs and SEMrush, you can filter by question keywords. When you filter by question keywords, you usually get keywords that kind of look a lot like how people might search an AI search. So use all those tools directionally and maybe group it all together and dedupe. You'll have some good data.
Okay, I'm not that smart on this space, but like there's not tools where you can see volume by prompts. Like Scrunch is one that I've heard
Yeah,
of.
good
I don't
question.
know. Like
So, this is one of the most hotly debated topics in our space right now.
we
AI
can pause
tracking
the recording
tools.
if it's like a
No, it's all good. I mean,
okay.
I'm super happy to be like transparent about what's happening. AI tracking tools like Profound, I think Scrunch, some of the other ones are now providing prompt volume data. Um, Listen, I'm of the opinion that some data is better than no data, but we have to understand the caveats of that data and how they're collecting that data. It's not perfect, right? It's definitely nowhere near like as accurate as Google providing us with Google
Right.
Ads keyword data, right? But it's nice that we have this now. What they're doing is they're collecting clickstream data. So it's very similar to what a company like SimilarWeb is doing, where they're actually like buying data from usually like Chrome extensions that sell data and kind of tell you about how people are navigating the internet. They collect all that data, aggregate it, and then they can say, okay, we actually can see a lot of the ways that people are searching on ChatGPT. They're actually collecting that data and then aggregating it, removing personal information. And then what they're doing, because it's such a small percentage of users that use these Chrome extensions compared to the broader internet, they're extrapolating it out to a broader population. So they can say, if 1% of the internet is using Google Chrome and using these Chrome extensions, let's multiply that out for the whole United States population. And let's assume that this many people are talking about these topics in ChatGPT every week or month or whatever. So it's very directional data. It's very murky data, but again, maybe it's better than nothing. And if you use it kind of in a relative way to say, okay, within their own database of prompts, we know that this one has more data than this one has more volume than this one. You can use it in that way. I would just
Mhm.
be careful to like really consider those numbers to be 100% precise because they're just not.
Yeah, that's great. So my takeaway is like if I'm a demand marketer and I was in this seat where I was trying to understand like what prompts are people searching for in relation to our tool to help with our positioning. And like if we were to own a phrase, like what phrase we should go after. And the answer is like you're not really going to find that. Like you should look at keyword data that's strong or just talk to people and ask
Yeah,
them
I mean, I think like we have
what they're
so many
searching
tools
for.
already that do this. Like yes, like the interface has changed. People are searching on LLMs now. Maybe they start their searches more on LLMs and maybe they're searching in different ways. But like fundamentally, the demand for certain topics and keywords, we already have tools for that. Like
Yeah.
we have Google Trends, for example. If people are searching a lot more for a certain topic on Google Trends over time, you're going to see that like reflected in Google Trends. So I feel like yes, you should use prompt volume and use these new tools and everything, but you should also supplement it with the existing keyword research tools that we've been using for a long time.
And then we use this new tool that's really amazing. It's called our brains, which is to think about like, does this help people?
Yeah,
Um,
that's underused.
okay, great. Well, let's get into questions from the community. So go ahead and throw them in the chat. I saw one that I liked. Gray, do you want to come up if you're still here?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I feel like I'm kind of meeting my SEO hero. I said it in the chat, but Lily is my
Let's
favorite LinkedIn
go.
follow, and I think we
Oh,
all saw it
thanks.
here. Equal parts knowledgeable and very popcorn adjacent. As I put in the chat later, love the honest thoughts on a lot of the popcorn industry, cottage industry tools that have come up in AEO. But I guess I'll augment the question I originally asked because Lily covered it right after I asked it. So I'm thinking about a couple of like buy-ups on listicles that have pretty heavy citations in AI overviews for queries that we're trying to rank for. Is there any predictability? So not like LMs, but for AI overviews and SERPs, is there like any predictability, Lily, in time to value? Like if I bid in a position and it's a high position on these listicles and they're often cited for these queries, in 4 weeks, in 5 weeks, in 6 weeks, will I be guaranteed a brand mention in those, or is it more ephemeral than that? And I guess are citations in AI overviews as ephemeral as they are in LLMs? Hopefully that all makes sense. Kind of a
Did
mouthful.
you say did you say the word bid?
Yeah, yeah. PPC buy-ups. is the goal. So yeah, paid mentions, not, backlink for backlink.
But bidding within like the article itself to be mentioned, or bidding within Google Ads.
Bidding within the articles. So bidding
Okay,
for
and
an XYZ position. Yeah.
got it. And these articles are being cited heavily in AI overviews.
Correct. For a couple of pretty key queries. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say like first of all, this is one area of AI search that I personally think is something that is working now that won't work forever. I just see the writing on the wall. I don't because it's so easy to manipulate, especially because you can pay to play. This type of thing doesn't last very long on Google. So I think for now, yes, like being mentioned, even if it requires payment, is something that will get you visibility in Google search, in AI overviews. And I think that's probably a worthwhile investment for the short term. But I do anticipate just, it's like my spidey senses that Google's going to have to crack down on this in some way. Google really doesn't like to elevate and cite in organic search results something that's pay to play. That's what we saw last year with site reputation abuse. You know, like these pay to play articles and everything where people are like promoting themselves across different publishers and making it look organic. Those sites all got penalized. The coupon sites got penalized, big publishers got penalized. I just think they're probably watching right now and they're developing something to counteract this. So I think for now, listen, like you'll probably see a lot of success doing that for now. As far as the ephemeral nature of AI overviews, that's just how it works. I think like the best way to kind of guarantee consistency in AI overviews is to frequently update the post. I think that there's definitely like they skew towards like recency and towards being updated a lot as far as what they're citing, but you can literally do the same search in AI overviews today and tomorrow and see two totally different sets of citations. So there's no guarantees there. But yes, I think bidding on being placed in those articles that are being heavily cited is probably a good approach for now. I would be careful about making that your strategy because I don't think it's going to work forever. But other than that, yeah, I mean, listicles are probably the single most effective thing in AI search just for now, for better, for worse.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Also, thank you so much for your presentation, Lily. Super great to hear about SEO. So I'm a researcher at MIT. I'm actually researching on agentic search. One thing I wanted to say is I saw your LinkedIn post about, how personas kind of influence the decision making, and I think it's true. I think what we found is ChatGPT, when it responds to 60% of the response depends on the memory it has about the person. So all of us are going to have different answers on like best research university, because it's like, where do we live? What do we study? What research for
Yeah.
what? What do you think about that? And how can kind of like we use like those personas to increase our AI suitability?
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I also think it's a challenge and a limitation for a lot of the companies that are doing LLM tracking because if they're using like a logged out version of ChatGPT that it's not a paid account, it's not getting the personalization, it's not getting all those benefits that you get when you're a paid user, you're not actually really seeing what a lot of the users who are paying for the tool are seeing. And to your point, a lot of the answers are highly personalized. I think this is something that all these AI companies are really doubling down on is personalization. Google's been very, very clear about like, we want this to basically be your personal assistant that knows all about you and looks at your Gmails and it looks at your search history and knows where you live, right? Like obviously that's the direction Google's going. It wants it to be like you wake up in the morning and it tells you what's the news that you care about and what's the shoes that you should buy based on your other shoes. You know what I mean? Like that's where we're going, obviously. So I do think that that's something that makes tracking this very, very hard because everyone's going to get different answers based on their personal preferences and history and location and everything like that. But to your point, like creating personas is the best that we can do. So I know that some of these LLM tracking companies are now offering the ability to set up personas, and I think that's going to be necessary. It's not going to give you perfect representation of what your users see, but at least you can say, hey, I really understand my target audience and what that demographic looks like. And I want to track LLM responses just for that demographic. That's going to be much more accurate than just looking at like what's a generic answer to this question in ChatGPT.
Got it. Thank you so much. And follow question on that, like, is it possible to optimize specifically for persona? Like, will it be helpful not to just know, if I'm doing well with personas, but like different actions that I take based on, how I'm doing with those personas?
I think so. I mean, I think like you can think about that in your marketing strategy. I think like if you're building an ad campaign, what does the messaging look like? What does the content look like? Who are the people that are in the ad? With SEO, it could be like you could have different content that targets different audience pain points. I always think about the example of like trying to sell a car. There's different people that might be interested in the features of this car. Like you could be a 16-year-old who just got your driver's license. What are the safety features? You could be a family that just had a baby, like different things to know for different audiences. So I feel like in your content, if you're kind of speaking to all those different target audiences for your products and services, you're going to be much more likely to get picked up as like when AI search is answering a question for a specific audience, they're going to look at that content.
Got it. Thank you so much.
It's great. Kim, you had a good question. If you're here, you wanna ask it?
Yeah, happy to. Thank you. I have two questions. I think you guys already answered the first one. It was more about understanding what kind of tools we could use to reporting, because I'm always getting questions like, are we showing up in searches? The second one is I would really love your opinion on the impact around using brand evangelists. So thinking specifically like startup founders in content creation, because, your point did resonate with me. Like, hey, if it's already been answered, like, please, dear God, do not write another blog post about the same
Yeah,
thing. But thinking about original content and just what are your kind of thoughts on using, I guess, humans as the original piece of that?
definitely. Well, first question, as far as like tools, there's so many tools right now. There's, 150, 200 new tools in the space that all broadly do the same thing for LLM tracking. So you can demo a lot of different ones and pick the one that makes the most sense for you. But I think some of the biggest names are at this point like Profound, Peak AI, there's Scrunch, there's Evertune, there's Athena, and then there's the big SEO players that have new AI search capabilities as well. So like SEMrush and Ahrefs and SimilarWeb and Conductor and BrightEdge, like they all have AI tracking as well. So you kind of just have to like look at the landscape and see which one makes the most sense. They're all different prices and everything like that too. Um, but as far as the human part, that's actually something that I've been advocating for a really long time. Frankly, because I see it working better than anything else. The way that I use myself as an example of this a lot. When I first joined Amsive, I wasn't very public facing with my SEO knowledge. It was pretty behind the scenes, but I was attending a lot of conferences and then eventually I decided to speak at them. And turns out, being very public facing and having original opinions and ideas and sharing your experience publicly is such a good driver of business for the broader company. And I think that that's something that can be emulated across many different types of companies. So it's really like an evangelist or influencers or something that represent the brand. And the reality is, especially with like younger users and younger searchers, they like following people, right? More than like corporate accounts or brand accounts. And I think that the more that you can kind of have like a face to the name, of the company, and that face and that person has original insights and ideas, we see it working all the time in the SEO space. Like there's not just our space, but like marketing in general. There's all these figureheads, right? Who like go out there and they share their ideas. Everyone knows them. They don't even necessarily know the name of the company that they work for, but they know the people. I think that that's really the direction things are going. And I also think it's the direction that Google and the large language models are preferring because they really, really cite a lot of user generated content and social media posts. So, the stuff that gets the most engagement, generally speaking, comes from people, not from brands.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Can I ask a follow-up there, Lily? So, imagine this is like a lot of Demand Collective members, so I'm speaking for them, kind of for myself. Imagine I'm a demand gen marketer at a growth stage company, maybe Series B company. We're leaning heavily on founder brands, like our founders posting on LinkedIn. We're promoting those posts in thought leader ads. But really, they're just posting on LinkedIn right now. I'm like writing all the posts for them and they're tweaking them a little bit. That's like the extent of our founder brand and evangelist policy. Maybe they're going on some podcast. Is there anything I should do that's like low-hanging fruit to take advantage of that exhaust from an SEO perspective? Like if the outputs are just LinkedIn posts now, like should I do anything else with that to like get
Yeah.
more juice out of the orange?
Great question. I think that's actually like one of the most fundamental ways that you can like really try to win an AI search is by taking content wherever it's published and repurposing it across many different platforms. So, most days that I'm sharing a piece of content, let's say I speak at a conference and I come up with a new deck with new ideas. There's so many ways you can take that deck and repurpose it into different formats. Number one, you can write an article on your company blog. You could do a press release. You could do, social media posts that are catered to all the different social media sites, right? Like every day I post on LinkedIn and X and Blue Sky and sometimes Threads and sometimes Instagram. Like it's exhausting, but it's like so many different ways that you can get your voice out there for different audiences, and different, platforms work in different ways. But I do think like it shouldn't just be LinkedIn. I think you should take that content and repurpose it everywhere. And then not to mention like video and audio content is extremely important. So like I recently spoke at MozCon in New York, came home a couple days later, filmed my whole presentation on YouTube, put that on YouTube. And now, because YouTube is actually one of the most heavily cited sites in AI search because of the transcripts, the things that I said in the transcripts of that video are actually being mentioned in AI search as well. So like, definitely. And one good person to follow on this topic is Ross Simmons. He's been talking about this for a really long time. But like take one piece of content and repackage it, repurpose it across all the different mediums, all the different sites. That's going to be much more effective than just posting in one place.
Lovely. Which you mentioned here, cross-post to build models trust, consistently builds trust with. See the same core content published across multiple platforms. Blog, LinkedIn, post are more likely to cite it. Am I matching things, or was there something about LinkedIn articles that like they're a great place to post as well?
Yeah, I need to check on this. This was definitely a hack earlier in the year. I haven't taken a look at it lately, but basically LinkedIn Pulse. So you can go into your LinkedIn page and hit like create a new article, and that publishes to their folder called LinkedIn Pulse. At least for me, like when I publish something on LinkedIn Pulse, it shows up number one on Google and number one in ChatGPT like within 3 hours.
Yeah.
So it kind of feels like too good to be true. I don't know how long it's going to last, but for sure, like, I was much more conservative about duplicate content a few years ago. Now I'm seeing Google really likes to elevate like LinkedIn Pulse, Medium, Substack, Hub Pages, like all these different places where you can just kind of publish content. I wouldn't recommend copy pasting the same article across many different places, but I would recommend having a multi-platform strategy where maybe you have a Substack and maybe you also have some LinkedIn Pulse stuff, and maybe you're kind of like tweaking it, making it different each time, but having more of your voice out there across the different sites, I think is extremely beneficial.
That's why you guys take time out of your day on a Tuesday to come to Demand Collective webinars, because you get the sauce, and the sauce is post on LinkedIn articles. I heard from another demand gen leader that the same thing. She's like, we just started posting on LinkedIn articles. It's been like getting very minimal reach on LinkedIn, but like crushing for us in terms of leads that it's getting. And she didn't know why, so maybe that's why. That's interesting. It's so simple. It's like such a no-brainer to do if you're already posting LinkedIn posts. Okay, yeah, that's super helpful. Let's see. Oh, I guess Samantha's question quickly, like you talked about the freshness thing, like you want to update content. How do you do that? Like what changes do you like? She was like, I'm guessing just moving the publish date is not enough. Like how should you operationalize that if you're,
So that's a good example of something that I mentioned before. Like you want to work with an agency that has SEO experience. Most agencies that have substantial SEO experience, including getting in trouble with Google, because any good SEO has gotten in trouble with Google at some point, right? We have to learn from our mistakes. There's something called artificial refreshing in Google. It's one of Google's spam policies. They've had it for a long time. And the thinking is, if you are literally artificially refreshing an article by saying that you've updated the date of publication or modification without changing the content, it's very easy for them to see that. I've had people ask me over the years, oh, you really think they can see that? Of course they can see that. They can see everything. So, don't cheat, right? Like don't just change the year or the month or whatever to try to trick AI search. You do want to do your due diligence and read the article and update it for the year or the month or whatever. And this is industry by industry. Like it depends. So NerdWallet, for example, updates their stuff monthly. Like you can look at the latest interest rates or whatever it is, and it's like truly updating. That's why they have like such recent content. They have systems in place to automatically update things based on the latest data, latest numbers. But like for a lot of companies, I really recommend, like, honestly, just annually at least for your best content, because I think having that year in the timestamp, it really helps with click-through rate. So, if you have a piece of content that's doing really well in AI search in 2025, for example, you do want to go into that article in 2026 and just make sure it checks all the boxes, make sure everything's still accurate, maybe add some new insights and new trends for 2026, and then update it again. But I do think that's something that is working extremely well. But I'd be very, very careful, just because when something works and it's too good to be true, Google tends to crack down on it. So just be, you can go look at Google's quality guidelines and read what artificial refreshing is. Just make sure you're not doing that.
Can I
It's a
ask a
funny phrase.
follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
Lily, are you saying it's better to refresh, like you said, an article rather than like write a new one about the same topic? So like if I did something in 2025, instead of doing, updates for 2026, new article, just go back and update the old one?
It's case by case, but in many situations, yes, you can just take the old article and update it. This is why in the SEO space for many years, we recommend not putting years in URLs, because, for example, if you have a page that's holiday gift guide,
Sure.
you can use that same page every year. You can start to drive a lot of links to it. You can drive a lot of attention to that page. And then that page starts to every year collect a lot of basically valuable signals that it's a high quality page. And then every year you can put in the title, holiday gift guide for 2026, holiday gift guide. You can change the title, you can change the headline, you can change the date modified every year, and it's going to be treated like basically a new page. But because it has all that history, you're getting all the benefits of a historical page as well. So I think keeping URLs the same is generally very helpful for SEO. And what you don't want to do is have your website become unruly, where you're just kind of like publishing the same thing over and over across different URLs, but you kind of already said it in another year, and then you're creating a lot of like potentially duplicate content. So in many cases, it just makes sense to update. Or if you have two similar pages, sometimes you can redirect the old one to the new one or that type of thing. But generally speaking, consolidating your URLs and having less is generally a better approach for SEO.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Wait, why is that? Consolidating URLs and having less
Because one of the biggest culprits of getting hit by Google's algorithm updates is lots of content that's not high quality. And the more content you're putting out there, the higher the chance that you're not going to be able to maintain that content. I've worked with so many companies who, let's say they've been around for 15 years and they've published 50 articles a day for 15 years. You do the math, it's so much content. And it's really, really hard for Google's crawlers to get through all of it. There's this concept of crawl budget, which means they can't crawl everything on your website. So the more that you're kind of intentional about what you allow to be crawled by search engines and AI crawlers, what you're allowed to get indexed, the tighter you keep that with, like, we're really, really comfortable with these pages being very, very high quality, the more you clean things up so the crawlers are not wasting their time on content that's kind of old or outdated or irrelevant, the better you're going to perform. And for SEO, at least for Google and Bing, they look at these site-wide signals, which means what's the average quality of all the content that we're able to see. If there's a lot of content that is out there and it's low quality and it's like a really big chunk of your website, that can affect all the rest of the performance of your content across the entire website.
So is there a way to operationalize that where you're like looking at, I don't know, total traffic and bounce rate or click-through rate or whatever on pages, and then once that drops, I don't know what the correct SEO term is, but don't let sites crawl them or just delete the content?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think this is something we do a lot of. It's like maintaining some type of like database of performance metrics for all your pages, right? So you could look at all types of different metrics. So it could be how much traffic it's getting, how many impressions it's getting, what's the user experience, time on page, bounce rate, conversions, key events. Like Google Analytics has a million different ways you can track events on the page, scrolling, you can do heat maps, like having all that data and just saying, okay, maybe there's this chunk of our website. Like more often than not, you're going to see companies discover that they have some neglected part of their website that they didn't even realize was being indexed in organic search. Sometimes that could be like 30% of your site. Like, oh, we didn't know that all these really low quality pages, there's like 20,000 of them in the search results, and we need to clean that up. So that's like due diligence that you should always be doing. But a good starting point is at least just pulling your Search Console and analytics data.
Love it. Okay, Fong, you had a question on YouTube data. You want to come on and ask it?
Hi, yes. Can you guys hear me well?
Mhm.
Yes.
Great. But yeah, thank you for the presentation. It was super helpful. So I have the question regarding maybe like different format of content and how you see it play out in different platform. So we have a really strong YouTube channel. A few of our experimental reels started doing really well. Um, for YouTube channel, we see that it's more for top of the funnel. It doesn't, drive conversion. More maybe like people who are kind of from unaware to the aware stage, and then from the website, it started moving a little bit down the funnel. But I'm wondering, do you see any trends in SEO? Like, should we do more of linking cross-platform from now on? Let's say, how do you think about maybe like consolidating traffic from Twitter or YouTube and then potentially Substack newsletter?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, with YouTube, it's tricky because there's only like you can link in the description, which I do think is something that's underutilized. I think a lot of people maybe they only add one link to the description, but you can add a few. You can also use things like timestamps and everything. So like optimizing the description in YouTube is a big opportunity. But yeah, within these other sites, like third-party sites, I think you want a healthy mix of like number one, you have to remember that these companies, their incentive is to keep users on their own platforms. So like some of these companies like X, for example, have had like literal algorithms that demote content that have links back to your website, because they don't want people to click away from their platform and click onto other sites. So I think like with LinkedIn, for example, when you post on LinkedIn, you see a lot more engagement when you don't include links in the post. So you have to be careful. Like you don't want to do too many posts that are always linking back to your website just because your engagement won't be very good. Like you want to share original ideas on these platforms as well. But obviously you do want to use these tools to drive traffic and visibility to your site as well. So I think like incorporating, calls to action where you're driving traffic back to your site is very important. For YouTube, I think to your point, like a lot of it's going to be very, very informational, upper funnel, but I think that's actually a really good place to invest right now because like AI search in particular does pull from YouTube videos so often, and now they actually embed a lot of YouTube videos into the answer. So I think I would probably recommend if you're going to be doing informational content or upper funnel content, that YouTube's probably the best place to do that right now. But yeah, I think just treat it like what it is, right? Like maybe it's not going to be the most conversion oriented content, but you're going to be getting your brand out there a lot more. And you're probably going to be getting a lot more visibility and mentions and citations because you have this informational YouTube channel. And one case study that comes to mind, and this is from Ethan Smith from Graphite. He's been sharing a lot of work that he does with a company called Webflow. And they have a really, really strong YouTube channel. And that's helping them with AI search a lot. So I would take a look at that case study because they're doing a great job there.
Sure. And would you say it's helpful to cross-refer your YouTube channel and maybe like Substack on your website? Like should your website hold everything else?
100%. Yeah. I think you should have at least on a page like where to find us with links to all your different social profiles. And then, your social profiles should link back to your website. I think that's really important at the very, very least. It's for SEO, for, Google to understand you as an entity when they look at things like Google's knowledge graph. So basically, when you type the name of a person, place, or thing, and Google shows that really rich kind of result directly in Google's results for the brand or whatever, a lot of times they'll show the different social media profiles in there. And that's because they're very confident. Like this is the official Facebook page, the official LinkedIn page, and X page, and everything. So you want to link them all together for sure. And I think like for what we call EEAT, experience, expertise, authority, and trust, the more that you can say like, hey, like we have an active presence across all these different social media sites. And if let's say you're a really big Substack user, or you're really big, even for me, like I'm a DJ, like SoundCloud, there's different platforms for everyone. Just showing that you're present on all of them is something that actually reinforces that you're a trustworthy and very active brand.
This is very helpful. Thank you.
I don't know how many B2B companies have cracked SoundCloud ads, but that would be funnier, like listening to a mix and then it's like, by the way, the best CRM is HubSpot. And then I mean, layering onto that, it's like cross-posting, right? So if you have a content machine that's creating a bunch of high quality YouTube content, that's like a content brick that you can repurpose into all these other places, and that builds trust for people and machines. Okay, we got about 4 minutes. Put your questions in the chat. If you have more, you have an amazing opportunity to learn from an SEO expert, not just any SEO expert, Gray Levine's SEO hero. So take it, please. I don't see any other ones. So Kim, you want to come back on? You had a question on subdomains.
Yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on content, so like blog resources, case studies, living on a subdomain, specifically when thinking about B2B brands. And just to kind of give some context for, why you might do this is tools like HubSpot can make managing that content pretty simple. But I'd be curious to know like what the impact is from your point of view.
Yeah, this is it's like the biggest debate of SEO history is subdomain versus subfolder. It's like something that we've been debating for 20 years. There are a lot of case studies out there that show that when you migrate from a subdomain to a subfolder, so blog.website.com to website.com/blog, there appears to be some SEO value that comes from that. But there's many other people that say, listen, we've had our blog on a subdomain and we've seen great results as well. So it really depends on the implementation. If you're going to set it up on a subdomain, I think there's many examples, hundreds of thousands of examples of companies doing that very effectively. And there's ways to do it effectively, but you have to be very careful about internal linking. So you want to make sure that like when you're on the blog subdomain, that you're driving through internal links, you're driving people back to the core products on your and website services on your website. Sometimes that's just like making sure that your navigation is replicated or the most important parts of your navigation are brought over to the blog. One benefit to having your blog on a subdomain that I've seen is that you can usually get better performance in Google Discover if you care about Google Discover for the subdomain than for the main site. So if you're producing a lot of really engaging content on the subdomain, Google Discover, which is Google's basically like social media feed of lots of different articles, will be likely to send you more traffic to your subdomain than if you just had a blog on your main site. That's just something I've seen in my data a lot. So I think it's perfectly fine. I would just be very cognizant of that, the way you set up your internal linking.
Perfect. Thanks.
Sweet. Well, thank you everyone so much. This was awesome. Put in the chat what you thought about today's call. Give us a rating, 1 to 10, 1 to 10. Put it in the chat. I love the feedback. In the meantime, thanks everyone for joining. This was great. We do the kind of purpose of Demand Collective is to find really sharp practitioners like this and then give you access to them if you couldn't get access to them otherwise. So if you want to join, I'd love to have you in the community. It's demandcollective.io. Lily, you work at an amazing SEO agency, Amsive. You want to plug Amsive quickly, or if you have anything to
Yeah, no, I mean, I love my team. There's 30 of us. We specialize in all the different areas of SEO and AI search. We're obsessed. We talk every day, all day about this stuff. So if you want to work together, we'd love to work with you.
Sweet. Thank you, Lily. I've never gotten 100 out of 10 on a call before, and we did it today. Let's go.
Amazing.
So I'm going to take a screenshot of the chat, and then I will end the call.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone so much. This is great. I will see you all. See you all soon. All right. See you later. Bye.